Hello friends, welcome to Total Recap. Today we are going to explain a movie named Barfi, released in 2012, so sit with some popcorns, relax and enjoy this romance/drama movie. The movie begins by showcasing the beautiful town of Darjeeling in India, where we see an old man named Barfi taking photo of himself in a home called Muskan for special children. However, after taking the photos, he immediately loses consciousness. Later that day in Kolkata, we sees an elderly woman named Shruti Ghosh, who was once a close friend of Barfi during their young age and is now going to visit him as he is unwell. Apart from Shruti, there is also retired Sub-Inspector Sudhanshu Dutta, Barfi's very close male best friend, and Miss D'Souza present. They all sit down, and then they narrate Barfi's story. The story of Barfi begins from the very beginning when he was born. His mother had passed away. As Barfi grew up, it became apparent to his father that Barfi couldn't speak or hear. Then, the scene shifts directly to 1972, where Barfi first meets Shruti. Barfi couldn't hear anything, but he still lived his life to the fullest. His perspective on life was different from that of ordinary people. However, his actions often caused trouble for the people in his neighborhood, which is why Inspector Sudhanshu Dutta always kept an eye on him, and Barfi would always manage to escape from him. Besides that, Barfi played a game with every person who came into his life. In reality, he would cut a pole of any streetlight, stand there with his friend, and if his friend stood by him, he had complete trust in him. If his friend took even a step back, he wasn't worthy of his trust. Barfi did this because he was afraid that people would leave him, so he always tested their friendships. Afterwards, one day, Barfi spots Shruti on a train in Darjeeling. He follows her to the station and then, on a bridge, tells her that she is very beautiful and, as a result, he takes his heart out and places it at Shruti's feet. But Shruti does not accept his proposal, yet Barfi continues to follow her to a cafe where Shruti tells Barfi that he's wasting his time, as she is already engaged. After this, Barfi writes a letter to Shruti through his friend, saying, "Forget that we ever met, but if you wish, we can still be good friends." One day, Barfi meets Shruti again. Since then, they start spending time together, and old Shruti tells, "Barfi taught me to live openly, and the biggest thing he taught me is that in life, the biggest risk is never taking any risks." Once, Barfi is taking Shruti on a bicycle, but just then, he has an accident while saving her from a car. In actuality, the car in which he was saved had Barfi's father sitting in it, and Bubbly was also seated in that car, who had autism spectrum disorder. Bubbly was Barfi's childhood friend because Barfi's father used to be the driver for Bubbly's family, and whenever Barfi went to meet his father, he would also meet Bubbly. Now, since Bubbly had autism, her family left her in an institution named Muskan when she was just 6 years old. Because of this, Bubbly developed a strong resentment towards her parents, and she only had love for her grandfather. And now, even her grandfather didn't have many days left to live. So, Bubbly's father came to take her back home, and Bubbly decided to return home only on the advice of Daju, the founder of Muskan, because Bubbly was Daju's favorite child. When Bubbly returned home, she wouldn't speak to her parents. There was a caretaker in their house, and only her grandfather, whom Bubbly was very attached to. In the next scene, we see Barfi entering a party while Shruti is dancing at the party. He starts dancing with Shruti. Shruti's mother also notices this, but after so much fun and frolic with Barfi, Shruti falls in love with him too. But when Barfi breaks a streetlight while playing his trusted game with Shruti, she fails the game. However, Barfi forgives her. After this, both of them are sitting by a pond where Barfi takes off Shruti's engagement ring from her hand and throws it into the water. At this point, a beautiful kiss between the two, and when Barfi comes to Shruti's house to leave her, Shruti's mother sees Barfi and asks Shruti, "Who is this boy?" To which Shruti replies, "He's just my good friend." After this, Shruti's mother takes her to a place where some laborers were cutting wood, and upon seeing a man in a blue sweater among them, she says, "He's my friend's brother. He was very handsome in his youth, and I was completely crazy about him, so much so that I wanted to elope with him. Once we even got a chance to run away, but I didn't go with him. Now whenever I get a chance, I come here to see him and think about how my life would have been if I had run away with him." After this, Shruti's mother also suggests to Shruti, "At this point, where you're standing, I had turned from there, and anyway, Barfi can't speak, and you won't be able to hear him, so what's the use of such a marriage?" In response, Shruti says, "Mom, I don't like my fiancé Ranjit. I can't spend my whole life with him." But Shruti's mother doesn't listen to her at all and leaves from there. A few days later, Barfi goes to Shruti's house with a marriage proposal. There, he was caught with a letter written by his friends to Shruti's father. However, Shruti's mother intercepted the letter, and when she saw Barfi's marriage proposal for Shruti, she lies and informed her husband that he is a mute and deaf man who has come to donation. At this point, Barfi also sees Shruti and Ranjit together. Seeing them together, Barfi realizes, "This guy is perfect for Shruti. I have no place to marry Shruti." Afterward, Shruti's father gives money to Barfi, and then Barfi leaves. But before leaving, Shruti comes to meet him. When Barfi sees Ranjit's car, he says, "Your husband has a lot of money, and I have this old bicycle." He playfully expresses his frustration, saying, "If you were going to leave me, why did you love me in the first place?" However, just a few seconds later, Barfi apologizes to Shruti, saying that the pairing of her and Ranjit looks genuinely great, and with that, Barfi leaves. A few days later, Barfi finds out from his friend that Shruti is leaving Darjeeling with her family to live in another city. He follows Shruti to the train station, but he has an accident with a light pole. After Shruti leaves, Barfi becomes quite emotional. His father also lost his job because Bubbly's grandfather passed away. He had saved all his earnings in a trust fund under Bubbly's name, which led to daily arguments between Bubbly's parents. In reality, Bubbly's father was living with his in-laws. He was burdened with debt, so before father-in-law's death, he wanted to transfer his entire earnings to his name, but this didn't happen. However, when this didn't happen, Bubbly's father fired all the employees, including the Bubbly's granny and Barfi's father. After that, one day, Barfi's father suddenly became very ill. He tried to inform Barfi, but Barfi couldn't hear anything. When Barfi woke up the next morning, he was surprised to see this, so he admitted his father to the hospital. There, we found out that Barfi's father's kidneys had failed, and he would need an operation to fix them, which would cost 7,000 Indian rupees. However, Barfi didn't have that much money, so he tried to borrow money from his father's employer, but he didn't get any help there either. After that, he saw Bubbly as his last option to get the 7,000 Indian rupees by kidnapping her. Now, in the middle of the night, Barfi quietly reached Bubbly's room, but the police were also there following him. This was because they had already received the news that Bubbly had been kidnapped, as they had received a ransom note for 1 lakh rupees earlier. Meanwhile, Barfi managed to outsmart the police in some way and successfully escaped. However, Barfi was troubled by one thing: who had finally kidnapped Bubbly. Then, when Barfi couldn't find any other way to save his father, he planned to rob the city's commercial bank. But unfortunately for him, Inspector Sudhanshu Dutta and Mr. Chatterjee were also at the bank to withdraw money to rescue Bubbly. When Barfi shows a gun to the bank cashier, the bank alarm goes on, which was being reported to Inspector Dutta, but Barfi was unaware of it. Later, Inspector Dutta also discovers that Barfi is the one attempting the robbery in the bank. Afterward, Barfi escapes to a car, where he is confronted by Bubbly. In the next scene, we see that Mr. Chatterjee is about to free his daughter by paying money to Bubbly's kidnapper, but Barfi takes her away in the car. When Bubbly regains consciousness, she is taken to Barfi's house. Initially, Bubbly is quite nervous, but later, she starts to enjoy Barfi's funny activities. Now, Barfi and his friend create a ransom note to get money from Mr. Chatterjee, which reads, "Drop rupees 7,000 at the post office at 11 p.m. Upon hearing the news of Bubbly's kidnapping, Muskan's founder, Daju, gets very angry and says, "I took care of Bubbly for 15 years, and you guys couldn't handle her for 15 days. The next day, Mr. Chatterjee, along with Inspector Dutta, comes to collect the ransom and catch Bubbly's kidnapper. However, Barfi, along with some children, comes to the spot and takes the money bag, and then he deposits that money in the hospital. When he goes to the doctor, he learns that his father is no longer. After performing the last rites of his father, Barfi leaves Bubbly outside her house and walks away. However, Bubbly doesn't enter her house but rather starts liking staying with Barfi. On the other side, Inspector Dutta figures out from the numbers on the notes given by Barfi at the hospital that Barfi has kidnapped Bubbly. After that, they go to her house to apprehend him, but upon seeing Inspector, Barfi tries to escape. But just then, Bubbly appears in front of him. Afterward, Barfi takes her with him, and then, at a station, Bubbly gives him her granny's address. Holding it in his hands, Barfi tells her to take a bus to go there. But Bubbly doesn't agree. So, after leaving her at her granny's house himself, Barfi goes to take a bus from there. However, when Barfi sees Bubbly running behind his bus, he gets off the bus. Then one day, he sees an article in the newspaper by Mr. Chatterjee, where the news of Bubbly's kidnapping is published, and the kidnapper is identified as Barfi. After seeing this, he flees from there as Inspector Dutta was getting closer to catching Barfi, but once again, Barfi manages to outsmart them. After that, Barfi came to Kolkata with Bubbly, where he started doing small jobs and eventually began living in a rented house. The landlord gave him a job in his utensil shop. They both lived together and were very happy, as if they were husband and wife. One day, Barty saw Shruti at his shop and she was also very happy to see him. However, she was already married to Ranjit, so she left with him. Now, because Barfi had spent a lot of time with Bubbly, he decided to test their friendship and cut a street light. But Bubbly didn't take a step back out of fear. This made Barfi realize that if someone could spend their whole life with him, it was only Bubbly. One day, Shruti came to meet Barfi at his shop, where Barfi took her home and introduced her to Bubbly. Seeing them together, she felt that she had missed the chance to spend her life with Barfi because she was not happy with Ranjit either. They could talk to each other, but their hearts were silent. Ranjit had everything: money, the ability to speak and hear, but his love was incomplete. On the other hand, Barfi was incomplete, but his love was complete. Now we see that Shruti was about to meet Barfi after a few days, but Bubbly was not happy with these meetings. Then one day, when Barfi scolded Bubbly in front of a street food shop, she got angry with Barfi and left without telling him where she was going. Barfi had no idea about this. After that, we see Bubbly making a phone call. On the other hand, Barfi spent the whole night searching for Bubbly throughout the city, but he couldn't find any information about her. The next morning, Shruti filed a missing complaint for Bubbly with the police without informing Barfi, which led to this news reaching the Darjeeling police as well. After that, Inspector Dutta from Kolkata arrives, and Shruti takes him to Barfi's house. Now, because Inspector Dutta was looking for Barfi, he once again chases after him and eventually catches Barfi. After being caught, Inspector Dutta takes Barfi to Darjeeling. Seeing this, Shruti also tells her husband Ranjit that he will have to go to Darjeeling for some work. Upon hearing this, they both argue, and when Shruti reaches Darjeeling, she stops Inspector from beating Barfi. However, after that, Inspector informs her that Barfi tried to rob a bank, and besides that, he has also kidnapped the granddaughter of Darjeeling's most famous man. Hearing this from the inspector and seeing Babely's picture, Shruti is quite surprised. Now, Shruti sees only one way to save Barfi. So, she calls Barfi's best friend to the police station because he was the only one who could understand Barfi's language. After that, Barfi tells the whole story, from her father's illness to Bubbly's disappearance. Here, as an audience, we also learn that at Bubbly's house, there were 2 ransom notes at that time. One of them was written by Barfi, but the other one demanded 1 lakh rupees, and it was unclear who had written it. According to that ransom note, Mr. Chatterjee, once again, takes 1 lakh rupees and arrives at the kidnapper's specified location with the senior police inspector. The kidnapper takes the money from Mr. Chatterjee and throws Bubbly into the water along with the car. That night, many police officers searched for Bubbly in the water, but they couldn't find her, meaning that Bubbly was now considered dead by everyone's eyes. Barfi had no news about this, but when he was caught, then Bubbly's father, Mr. Chatterjee, beat Barfi severely. In fact, the senior inspector had falsely accused Barfi of killing Bubbly in order to close the case. But Inspector Dutta was completely against this, so he called Shruti and said, "Before Barfi gets trapped in Bubbly's murder case, take her away with you from here." On the other hand, when Shruti starts going with Barfi, Ranjit tells her, "If you leave today, don't come back into my life." After this, Shruti buys a ticket to Kolkata for Barfi, even though she already had a ticket in her hand, and now it was her decision whether she wanted to go with Barfi or stay with Ranjit, just as her mother had done. But here, Shruti decides to go with Barfi. Afterward, they both go to Kolkata again, and now, living with Barfi, Shruti was quite happy. However, Barfi was not happy because he missed Bubbly a lot. One day, Barfi sees a mobile number written by Bubbly on a wall. When they dial the number, they find out that it belongs to Muskan, where Bubbly has been staying since the beginning. Afterward, Muskan's founder, Daju, tells Barfi and Shruti that Bubbly has passed away. But Barfi, seeing Daju's nervousness, didn't trust him, so he started looking for Bubbly in the entire home. He even tried calling her by throwing his shoe near the windows of the upper rooms because, in his childhood, whenever he went to Bubbly's house, he used to call her the same way. But here, when Barfi didn't get any response, he started to leave. Although Bubbly was still in Muskan, and Daju had now left the decision entirely up to her whether she wanted to go with Barfi or stay in Muskan. It was Bubbly who decided to go with Barfi and called out to him. Although Barfi couldn't hear Bubbly's voice, Shruti had heard it. The decision was now in her hands whether she wanted to reunite the 2 lovers or take Barfi away from Bubbly and share her whole life with him. But here, Shruti tells Barfi about Bubbly, and both of them are very happy about it. A major twist occurs in the movie here. We find out that when Bubbly separated from Barfi and called someone in Kolkata, she actually called Daju. After that, Daju informed Mr. Chatterjee about it, and we learn that when Bubbly disappeared before, it was Mr. Chatterjee who had kidnapped her and even wrote a ransom note for 1 lakh rupees himself, so he could extract some money from his family by pretending that Bubbly had been kidnapped. To kidnap Bubbly, he had also hired a man who had thrown Babely's car into the water and spread the news of her death. However, that night, Daju had already taken Babely away from there. Afterward, Barfi marries Bubbly, and Shruti is also a part of the wedding. Then, they both start living together. Now, we are shown a scene from the present day where Barfi is very ill, and Babely has also aged significantly. After that, she goes to Barfi's hospital room and lies down next to him, and then they both fall asleep forever. In other words, they spent their lives together, and in the end, they pass away in each other's arms, and the movie concludes here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to watch content like this.